Hello, hello. Welcome to Tech Ascent, the podcast where we dive into the trends, strategies, and success stories that are reshaping the tech landscape as we know it today. I'm your host, Oliver Klingane. I'm also the founder of Ascension, the premier biz development partner within tech. Today, joined by a very exciting founder and CEO, Eric Gordon, head of Parakeet. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Oliver. Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what the mission is behind Parakeet?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Parakeet. Parakeet's a cold email infrastructure where we focus on kind of a lot of things, but like our main focus is email delivery and really just landing as many emails in the primary inbox as possible.
It's a good mission. Sure, there's a lot of people that can find value in that. Doing that, what gap did you see in the market that made you want to kind of build up this business?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like we started as a cold email agency like years ago. Um, and we focused on really just like mastering um, email and success for our clients. Like way back when I started, before I started the agency, I was leading a handful of different sales teams at different tech startups. And we came up with like a really different model at the time. Now, today it's probably a little bit different, and I would say more adopted across like the SDR and like tech sales community. But we had a team, I think the team was probably like 10 or 12 SDRs, and we were doing lots of cold email, lots of cold calling. And I, kind of a funny story, like I ended up getting lunch with one of our top SDRs and asked, like, it was like a late lunch. It was like 2 in the afternoon. And like we sat down, like asked her how her day was going, like what was new. And like she told me she had just finished launching a new email campaign. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what else did you do today? And like turns out she spent her whole day like building a new email campaign. And like that's cool. And like she's was probably pretty good at it, but like do we want our top SDR? Did we want our top SDR at the time spending all of her time or half of her day writing email copy and like launching email campaigns? So it was kind of one of those like moments where I realized like we should fix this. Like we should be a little bit more streamlined. And what we ended up doing was like I took email away from our SDR team and said, we'll handle it at the company level. Like SDRs, we want you to focus on having quality conversations. So that was really like the biggest part where like again, like the aha moment where realize, okay, SDRs are spending way too much time on like the administrative type things. If I take it and like if I take email from them as one of those items, I can master it at the company level and they can focus on quality conversation. So that's when I started obsessing over email and like got really um, kind of like detailed with how I set up the infrastructure. I mean, this was like, I think 2014, 2015. So before like these cold email platforms were heavily adopted. And long story short, like I ended up running email for all of our SDRs and our sales team. And I would pass those like engaged leads that were opening the emails, engaging with the content, clicking on links. I would pass that over to our SDRs. And what happened was our SDRs were having significantly more conversations and booking many more meetings. So our success rate started to multiply. And that's when I realized, like, I think, first of all, like, we're onto something. Long before I started building the product, I had companies that were reaching out to me saying, hey, I see what you guys are doing. Like, you're booking lots of meetings. Can you help me set up a similar infrastructure? And that's really where the agency started. We started kind of like, I started taking on clients as like a side hustle and then like just to see if it would work. And like turns out like, yeah, we could replicate this for other companies. We started scaling our agency, got to the point where like we were piggybacking lots of different email softwares together to try to make it as successful as possible and realize like we should just build a better solution for this. Like we should do it. So yeah, um, we launched about a year ago, and so we're still fairly new, but we had tested out the tech long before we launched from our own agency. We were the ones like we were our first customer, so we kind of like perfected it before we went to market with it. So it's cool. It's a little bit different, and like again, we focus on deliverability. So that's the number one thing. If you can't deliver an email, you're not going to get a reply. You're not going to book a meeting. That's our number one focus. That's kind of the core of our business, and that's what's kind of got us to where we are today.
Nice, and that's definitely a super unique journey through kind of the tech space. And from that aha moment at lunch with the top SDR to launching about a year ago, how long was a of a time horizon was in between those two moments?
Yeah, kind of a long time. Like maybe from that moment, like maybe 9 or 10 years, like about 9 years. Um, but it was like a very slow roll. Like I joined a few different startups after that. Um, I would launch and implement a similar process where like, I kind of ran the email, like point on email and more of like a go-to-market approach and like focus the SDRs on having really quality conversations. So it was a slow roll. Started taking on clients like over the course of several years before we really like launched the full agency. So um, yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and like I want to say like really well thought out, but really it just came down to like solving problems that I ran into along my career.
And sometimes that's the best way to build a product is something that solves problems that you're actually dealing with.
Right. Yeah.
And through that kind of journey, we'll just call it a decade to make it simple. From the aha moment to launch, what lessons did you learn along the way, being an agency owner and now being a tech founder? What lessons have you learned that have really kind of helped you along your path?
Lots of lessons. Some of the biggest ones are like just being able to adapt quickly and like pivot when you recognize you need to pivot and change. Um, like we live in the like outbound sales world, which is like constantly changing, like almost every day it feels like.
Hmm.
Um, Things like like sender policies are released by Google, Gmail, like things are just rapidly changing, or a new technology will be released that kind of like changes the way you have to think about or execute on a go-to-market strategy. So we've just and like I've always kind of thought this way, and actually not always. Like early in my career was it's tough. Like change is tough, and pivoting is hard to do. But I realized like the faster I could pivot and change and adapt, like the easier it is to overcome certain obstacles. So that's always been a big thing. Like we at Parakeet, we make decisions really quickly. Like we want to make sure they're well thought out decisions, but like if we notice, okay, something's changing and it might affect like us, and it might not affect us in 2 months, 6 months, a year from now, like we need to make decisions today because that's going to affect our future. And we've gotten really good at that. Everything from like pivoting our strategy. I can't say we pivot our strategy too much, but like we'll change the way we'll kind of like slightly adjust our direction as we go. Everything from the product to like our team and like hiring and making sure we have like the best people and like best resources. So yeah, I would say like that's the biggest thing that we really try to focus on.
Awesome. Just always looking ahead, essentially.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. A small change today, compounded over a year, it adds up to make a big difference and kind of puts Parakeet in a much better position than it would have been if you didn't make that small change.
Right.
Mm,
Exactly.
And being in such a competitive landscape, you can correct the label, the outbound kind of software space. It's very competitive. You got big players like Instantly really kind of dominating the market right now. How do you go about kind of building up Parakeet's name and taking a share of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, there's like tons of competitors out there. There's like the landscape is like kind of crazy, and everyone's always trying to find like like newest, best technology out there to use. Um, we really attack it. It's kind of a few different angles. I don't want to say like one main angle, but like we have built a really unique and cool brand. I feel like it's a unique and cool brand. Um, we try to communicate through like different channels where we're providing as much education as possible around how to be successful with cold email, um, which is really just all the learnings that we've found over the course of like time. Um, Now, it's not just learnings, like our platform has to be different. So there are certainly key differentiators between our product and some of the competitors out there. Most of it has to do with deliverability because like that's our core focus is um, like the component of success. Like if someone's on our platform trying to launch or deliver emails, like we want to make sure that they get the most replies, like the most have the most success in our platform. So that's like one of the bigger things. But really, the biggest thing is like I've used all the other platforms, and there's nothing like wrong with them. I don't want to talk bad about any of the platforms out there, but like we had used all the platforms when we were running our agency years ago, and like we still weren't finding the success that we needed for us and for our clients. So those things that we recognized were the reason why we built the platform in the first place.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of cool. And like I'm happy to go into details of what those things and like features are. But the biggest piece was like, I think we can do this better. Like I think we can be a little bit different and drive a little bit more success.
Hmm. For sure. And to survive in a competitive landscape like this one, you need that competitive mindset as well.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and speaking of mindset, there's obviously being a founder, CEO, you're probably dealing with setbacks every day. You're putting out fires every day. What mindset shifts have you had over the past couple of years, or even since that first aha moment at lunch? What mindset shifts have you had that allow you to keep pushing, keep going every single day?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in our space and like our vertical and our market, the opportunity is what drives me. Like there's just such a big market out there, and the problems that we're solving for are problems that like every other person it feels like they're running into. Um, so like from when we first decided to build this thing, even from before we decided to build this, um, I just constantly was evaluating the market and like talking to as many people as possible in the space to really figure out and validate like is it like is this worth it, like is this a big enough problem to solve for. And like yeah, there's tons of competitors out there, tons of different companies out there that do this thing, like do a version of this thing. um, but the more people I talk to, the more companies I talk to, like they were running into similar problems that I was running into at the time, and it just like further validated my idea. It's what keeps me super excited and motivated every day. um, like there's with the ever changing landscape and like technology, and like what I mentioned, like some of like the policies that are changing that like requires the quick pivoting and like adjustments. um, that's what validates like this opportunity as something that's always not always going to be there, but for the foreseeable future, like we're going to keep building, keep pushing, and really trying to change the way that people think about cold outbound.
Mm, fantastic. And on your website, speaking of things that are constantly changing, you mentioned policies there. Another one is the elephant in the room is AI. I know AI plays a major component in Parakeet's kind of offering. How is that integrated? How has that shift happened? And what made you want to act on that so quickly?
Yeah, it's there's so many different ways that you can use AI, obviously from everything from copywriting to like when we talk about deliverability, like improving deliverability, leaning into some AI models that we have. One of our first like validations of this was when we were using other tools before we had our own, we were basically like manually throttling email volume. And we were doing it based on like you're familiar with like outbound emails and email infrastructure. Like there's two different reputations that we manage. There's the domain reputation, and then each email account under that domain has a sender reputation. And we started experimenting with it. We're like, okay, if we start throttling emails based on account reputation or sender reputation, and also adjust and throttle emails based on the domain reputation, can we maximize delivery? And like we manually validated this and then built an AI model to essentially automate what we were doing manually, um, where we would adjust like things like volume, or we would adjust copy to try to really like improve center reputations and deliverability scores. And like it worked. So the first like one of the first things that we did was started working on this AI model for what we call smart throttling. Like that's a feature, but that was something that was like a key component of even building this infrastructure in the first place. So that's one example. It really like we use it as not just like a core functionality, but a tool and resource where, um, like if we're not using AI to like help our users write email copy, it's improving copy or running it through different ways to make sure we're proactively flagging for any sort of words that might get filtered in spam, things like that. So there's a ton of different ways that we kind of lean into it, but um, yeah, like there's a lot of cool stuff in the roadmap we have where we kind of can streamline the process a bit and get someone's from like A to Z, like set up and launch a campaign all the way to like generating leads, generating meetings in a really quick fashion, just leaning into those models that we built.
Mm. No, amazing. And AI is such a powerful tool. There's no reason to not use it. It sounds like you guys are taking full advantage of it. And so, Eric, we've talked a lot kind of about your growth as a founder CEO, what you guys are doing with Parakeet. I like to ask founders this question. If you could rewind the clock a little bit, tell yourself on day one of you starting your business, whether that be Parakeet just a year ago or back in the day when you started your agency, if you could tell yourself, give yourself one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
Yeah, that's a good one and kind of like a tough one when I reflect on it. It's like what would I do differently or what would I really like what would I focus on? And
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing is just like, and this is what I say to like my team and um like whenever we're trying to figure out what to do or what to prioritize, it's just like focus on what is most important and then like master that one piece.
Hmm.
So like when we first like even when we first started building Parakeet, like there was all these kinds of things that we wanted to build and like we were playing in all these different areas and we got to the point where it's like, okay, we need to focus on like core functionality and like get that done first. And um so a big piece for that is like just focus, like uh identifying what's most important and like focusing on that and doing it at a really kind of extreme level of detail and like execution. And then once that is like done and mastered, like that's when we can start focusing on the next thing and like building a bigger, better product and version of what we're aiming towards.
So focus on the things that actually move the needle.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I
because
think we've all been there where like it's easy to get distracted and like focus on the shiny object or like pivot and start building whatever is like kind of shiny in front of you. But yeah, that focus, like sometimes the blinders on, really important.
yeah, no doubt, and I completely agree. Is sometimes when there's so much to do, you don't actually dial in on the thing that needs to be done, and there's a lot of noise going on. So sometimes that's a skill on its own, is figuring out what needs to be done, then doing it and executing, like you said.
Exactly.
So we've talked about what you would do if you could tell yourself in the past. Let's look forward now. What's the goal for Parakeet? What's the vision? What's the game plan?
Yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff lined up. When we think about like our product roadmap, I mentioned a little bit about some of the AI models that we're building. Um, Near future plans for us, like we want to really just deliver a super solid platform. Like we want our users to not just find success in our platform, but to like tell their friends about it, tell their network about it. And we're making some really cool progress in that. The next step of it is like building some of those features in our roadmap that make it go from like, okay, this thing works really well to like, this is awesome. You need to try it. It has this feature, or like it does this that some other platforms might not have, which is really what we're like aiming to build. Um, and I can't wait for those to come. Like they're just around the corner. But um, yeah, for us, like in the next 6 months to a year, like we're just cranking out new features, trying to ship like the best version of our product and get as much user feedback as possible. That part's been incredibly helpful. Like we have some awesome customers that are just like, hey, it would be cool if it did this, or like they share like really great feedback with us. Then I take that like to heart. Like that's any feedback from a customer, like that's one of the first things that we'll look into and like identify how we prioritize it. And a lot of times, like we built some cool features just from ideas that some of our users had. So, um, yeah, it's kind of the next 6 months to a year. Again, things change, so like I know we should look probably beyond that, but a lot of it's just like pivoting and like adjusting and really dialing this thing in.
No, fantastic, and I've got full belief in what you guys are doing. And like you said, it's a constant up and down, daily pivots, daily actions. So I'm riding with you guys. I love what you guys are doing. Can't wait to see how it all plays out for Parakeet.
Amazing, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, for coming on. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, parakeet.io is our website. And feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/Eric D. Gordon. We do a lot of content around email deliverability, um, driving as much success through email as possible. So follow us. We also have a newsletter if you want to subscribe on parakeet.io.
Awesome. I'll link it all down in the description as well for anybody listening. But Eric, really appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome, Albert. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.